Ezra Levant here for Rebel News. I'm standing outside the Blanchardstown Courthouse. This is where earlier this morning the accused rapist of the 10-year-old girl had a brief first appearance. There's a few notable things about that appearance. First of all, he had legal aid. Second of all, and more interestingly, he had an Arabic translator. Now, he's been in Ireland for 6 years. Does he not speak English yet? The fact that he had an Arabic translator tells us a little bit about the man's identity, but for some bizarre reason, his name has not been released. Why is that? I can understand why the 10-year-old rape victim herself, her identity is concealed for her privacy, but why an accused rapist? Why would he be anonymous? There's something else that happened late last night that I have to say felt atrocious, not as atrocious as the rape itself, but it certainly added insult to injury. This 10-year-old girl was in the care of the state, something called TUSLA, which is the Irish Child and Family Services for children who have trouble. They find a home for them and are supposed to protect them. When news came out that this 10-year-old girl somehow made her way from custody of TUSLA to being raped, TUSLA put out a statement where they listed event after event besmirching the 10-year-old, implying that she had low morals and that she was unmanageable, essentially blaming the victim. Absolutely shocking, as if a 10-year-old girl in any way deserved this or brought this upon herself. I've never seen such a thing before, an attempt to cast her as a villain or cast her in some way as the author of her own misfortune. This from a government agency. It was they who failed her, and they're trying to blame her. Just absolutely gross. But back to the court itself. I want to draw your attention to the two flags that are flying there on the courthouse. Of course, the Irish tricolor, that's the flag of Ireland. But there's that EU flag, the European Union flag. Ireland remains in the European Union, unlike the United Kingdom, which had a Brexit. The money they use in Ireland is the euro. But that star circle has something to do with this rape too. Because one of the legal and political excuses that the government of Ireland uses to bring in mass numbers of migrants is they say they have some obligation under the European Convention of Human Rights to do so. It's not even an Irish law. They say, well, what can we do? Europe says we have to bring in these migrants by the million. And when I say million, I mean it. The population of Ireland is about 5 million. 1 million are foreign migrants here. Now, many of them came legally, but these illegal migrants, many of whom simply walk over the land border from Northern Ireland, throwing out their IDs and saying they're refugees, that's actually contrary to what the definition of a refugee is. If you're coming from Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, you cannot be a refugee because you're not in a dangerous place. It's just like the migrants who go from France to the UK itself. France is a safe place. By definition, ab initio, as lawyers would say, these are fake refugees. Back to the man in question, the man whose identity is being kept secret for some reason. For 6 years he was in this country. His application for refugee status was rejected. So it's got to be awful if the Irish government said no to him. They almost never say no. Why did it take 6 years for his case to be heard? And when he was ordered deported, why was he not deported? Why was he allowed to remain? I've seen one excuse given that the cost of it. What's the cost of a plane ticket? Especially compared to the ongoing welfare and free services that a migrant would be receiving, of course, the horrendous human cost of this rape. Earlier today, Gript, which is one of my favorite news sources, it's the only trustworthy independent news source in Ireland in my mind, they actually scrummed Simon Harris, the former prime minister, now the foreign minister. They asked him if there are any lessons to learn here. That's his favorite phrase when things under his watch go south. He says, it's a learning moment for us. Look at Ben Scallon of Gript. Ask Simon Harris what he thinks of this horrific event. And let me just say this, get your salad dressing ready, because this is a meaningless word salad. Take a look.
Tonista, what would be your message to members of the public who feel like incidents like this are an inevitable and even likely result of government policy, effectively, that the state is culpable in this case?
So the first thing I'd say, and I'd respectfully say to people, including people who are genuinely very concerned, deeply distressed and profoundly worried about the developments that they've heard of overnight. So I say this respectfully. I think what I would also say is we have to allow the facts to be established. There is an ongoing Garda investigation. The laws of this land are clear. The laws of this land must be enforced. The laws of this land will be enforced. Alongside that, there are a number of issues that I'm not yet in a position to comment on today, based on issues that have come to the fore regarding Tusa, regarding a young child, regarding their safety and their well-being, regarding the status of any individual involved in the committing of a potentially extraordinarily serious crime. So I would ask people to allow those facts to be established, but I am acknowledging that there are serious and profound issues.
So let's conclude. The foreign migrant who was ordered out of this country and refused to leave was heard this morning. He didn't actually say anything himself. It was a very brief appearance. He does not yet have bail, but I understand he may be back in court tomorrow morning seeking bail, and knowing the Irish courts, he'll get it. He had an Arabic interpreter, meaning he is obviously Arabic, if that's your language, and he hasn't bothered to learn English in the 6 years he's been here. And the government so far won't condemn him, but they'll smear the 10-year-old girl. What an outrage. We're going to make our way to City West, where I would imagine there's going to be people mustering already. Tonight at 7:30 p.m. will be a protest against this. Yeah, I was talking to an earlier I met another reporter from Virgin Media who seemed quite nice, and he asked why we came over from Canada, and I said, we've been covering the migrant crisis in Ireland for about a year and a half now, and it's fascinating to me to see the entire establishment on the side of the migrants and only grassroots organizers on the side of the people. Like, how can it be that none of the establishment parties are critical of open borders immigration, and none of the establishment media? I mentioned Gript Media. They're one of the few independent media in this country who are critical of this. How can it be? And we've seen more and more people march against mass immigration. But when I saw this news yesterday, I felt like something was qualitatively different. To have this migrant who was ordered out of the country but refused to go, allegedly rape a 10-year-old girl, and the first reaction of the government is to blame the girl. This is so shocking. This strikes so deeply to the heart. I believe that this is a turning point in the Irish debate over these issues, just like the Southport stabbings were a turning point in the United Kingdom, if you remember, when Axel Radicabana stabbed and murdered children at a child's party. That really radicalized people, that made people wake up in the UK, and this rape of a 10-year-old girl may be the same in Ireland. Follow along at migrantreports.com for all of our reports. Thank you.